The Galactic Council had watched Earth for 300 years. They sent small ships to hide behind the moon. They placed listening devices on satellites. They studied everything about the small blue planet and the creatures who lived on it. Their conclusion was simple. Humans were weak. Ambassador Velrose of the Cathani Empire stood before the council and laughed. He showed them videos of humans crying at sad movies. He showed them humans hugging animals. He showed them humans making paintings and singing songs. He showed them humans stopping their cars to help strangers on the road. These creatures are soft, Velrose said. They waste their time on feelings. They spend their resources on things that serve no purpose. Art, music, love, they are no threat to anyone, the council agreed. Humans would make good servants, good specimens for study, good entertainment for the powerful species of the galaxy. Nobody asked what would happen if someone hurt them. Captain Unibeak stood on the bridge of the research vessel. Starling. She was 42 years old with short black hair and calm eyes. Behind her, 47 crew members worked at their stations. This was Earth's first diplomatic ship to travel beyond their solar system. They carried no heavy weapons. They carried messages of peace and gifts of friendship. Una had trained her whole life for this moment. She believed that humanity would find friends among the stars. She believed that the universe was full of wonder and possibility. Lieutenant Tehan stood beside her. He was her second in command, a quiet man who thought before he spoke. He watched the stars through the main window and felt pride in his chest. They were making history. Captain, said Gina Rue from the communications station. I am picking up a signal. A ship is approaching. Una felt her heartbeat faster. First contact. The moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. Show me, she said. The main screen flickered. A massive warship appeared, 10 times the size of the Starling. It was covered in weapons. Its hull was black and sharp, built for war and nothing else. They are hailing us, Gina said. Her voice was nervous. Open the channel, Una ordered. The screen changed to show a face. It was not human. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore armor decorated with symbols Una did not understand. I am Admiral Corvax of the Cathani Empire, the creature said. You have entered controlled space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Una kept her voice calm. I am Captain Unibeak of Earth. We come in peace. We are not armed. We wish only to make contact with other species and learn about the galaxy. Corvax laughed. It was an ugly sound. Peace, he repeated. Yes, we have studied your kind. You are peaceful, weak, emotional. You will make excellent specimens. The channel closed. Tay stepped closer to Una. Captain, we should run. We can try to escape back to Earth space. Una shook her head. Their ship is faster. Their weapons are stronger. If we run, they will destroy us. She looked at her crew. These were scientists, doctors, engineers. They were not soldiers. We will cooperate. We will survive. And we will find a way home. She pressed the ship-wide communication button. All crew, this is the captain. An alien vessel is going to board us. Do not resist. Do not fight. Stay calm and follow their orders. Our mission is to survive. That is all. Dr. Hannah Lim, the ship's xenobiologist, walked onto the bridge. She was young, only 30, with bright eyes full of curiosity. She had spent her life dreaming of meeting alien life. Now that dream was becoming a nightmare. Captain, she said quietly. What will they do to us? Una did not lie to her. I do not know, but we will face it together. The Cathani soldiers boarded the Starling 1 hour later. They were large and brutal. They pushed the humans with their weapons. They laughed at the crew's fear. They called them animals and pets and toys. Ensign Sora Park was only 23 years old. She had joined the mission because she wanted to see the stars. She wanted adventure. She wanted to discover new worlds. Now she walked with her hands bound. Surrounded by aliens who saw her as nothing, She looked at Captain Yuna and saw something strange. The captain was not afraid. Her eyes were calm and cold. She was watching everything, counting the soldiers, memorizing the ship's layout, studying the aliens' movements so understood. This was not surrender. This was patience. The Galactic Council watched through hidden cameras on Korvax's ship. They saw the humans comply without violence. They saw them bow their heads and follow orders. They recorded everything and added it to their files. As predicted, said High Counselor Thren, the humans are docile. They will be useful workers for the Kethany. The other council members agreed. Humans were no threat. Humans were soft. Humans were controlled by their emotions and their need for peace. None of them noticed the look that passed between Yuna and Tay as they were led to the prison cells. It was a small look, just a glance. But it carried a message that the aliens could not understand. Not yet. But soon, the crew of the Starling was placed in cells meant for animals. The rooms were small and cold. There were no beds, only hard floors. The food was synthetic paste that tasted like nothing. But the humans did not break. They whispered to each other through the walls. They shared stories to keep hope alive. They watched their captors and learned their weaknesses. Captain Yuna lay on the cold floor and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Earth. She thought about her family. She thought about the peaceful future she had believed in. That future was dead now. The Kethani had killed it. Something else was growing in its place. Something old. Something that humanity had buried deep inside itself for thousands of years. Something that the galaxy had never seen. Yuna closed her eyes and waited. The time for peace was over. But the time for fury had not yet come. Soon, she promised herself, soon they would learn what humans really were. 6 months passed on the Kethany flagship. 6 months of cold cells and bad food. 6 months of being treated like animals. 6 months of waiting. The crew of the Starling learned to survive. They learned which guards were cruel and which ones could be ignored. They learned the schedule of the ship. They learned the sounds that meant danger and the sounds that meant safety. Captain Yuna kept them together. Every night, she whispered through the walls. She told stories about Earth. She reminded them of blue skies and green forests. She reminded them of their families and friends. She reminded them that they were human, and humans did not give up. Lieutenant Tay spent his days watching. He counted the guards. He timed their movements. He memorized every door and every corridor that he could see. He drew maps in his mind and held them there like weapons waiting to be used. Dr. Hannah studied the aliens. She watched how they moved. She listened to how they breathed. She noticed that they were slower in the mornings. She noticed that bright lights hurt their 4 eyes. She noticed that they favored their left sides in combat. Every weakness was a tool she stored away for later. Chief Engineer Minho Kang was forced to work in the ship's maintenance areas. The Kethani thought he was useful for cleaning and repairs. They did not know that he was studying their technology. He learned how their power systems worked. He found the weak points in their engines. He discovered which wires, if cut, would cause chaos. Sergeant Day Choi had been special forces before joining the mission. He had trained for years in combat and survival. Now he trained in secret, keeping his body strong in the small cell. He taught the other crew members how to fight without weapons, how to use their hands, how to strike fast and hard. Communications Officer Gina Rue listened. The Kethany did not know that humans could learn languages quickly. They spoke freely around her, thinking she understood nothing. But Gina was smart. After 6 months, she understood most of their words. She knew their command codes. She knew their secrets. The crew was ready. They were waiting for the right moment. Then Admiral Korvax made his fatal mistake. Ensign Sora Park was brought to the medical bay for testing. The Kethani scientists wanted to study human biology. They wanted to see how much pain humans could feel. They wanted to know how humans reacted to different chemicals. Sora was brave. She had been brave for 6 months. But when they brought out the tools, when they told her what they were going to do, she could not stay silent. She fought back. She hit one of the scientists. She tried to run. Corvax was called to deal with the problem. He stood before the small human girl and felt only disgust. These creatures were supposed to be obedient. They were supposed to be weak. This one had forgotten her place. "Bring the others," he ordered. "They need to learn what happens when humans disobey." The crew of the Starling was dragged to the main hall. They were forced to kneel on the cold metal floor. Guards surrounded them with weapons ready. The Galactic Council watched through hidden cameras, curious to see what would happen. Corvax stood on a platform above them. Sora was held by two soldiers, her arms twisted behind her back. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were defiant. "This human tried to resist," Corvax announced. "This is not allowed. You are property of the Kethany Empire. You do not fight. You do not resist. You obey," Captain Yuna spoke up. Her voice was calm and clear. "She is young. She was scared. Please show mercy. We will not cause more trouble." Corvax laughed. "Mercy is for the powerful to give. You are not powerful. You are nothing." He turned to his soldiers. "Execute her. Slowly. Make sure they all watch." What happened next lasted a long time. The Kethany made sure of that. They wanted the humans to understand their place. They wanted to break their spirit forever. The crew of the Starling was forced to watch as Sora died. They could not look away. The guards held their heads and kept their eyes open. Sora did not beg. She did not cry for mercy. In her last moments, she looked at her captain and smiled. A small, sad smile that said goodbye. Then she was gone. The Kethany expected weeping. They expected the humans to collapse in despair. They expected them to become even more obedient, more broken, more afraid. They did not expect silence. 46 humans knelt on the cold floor and made no sound. No crying, no screaming, no begging. Just silence so deep and so cold that even the guards felt uncomfortable. Captain Yuna's hands had been trembling before. Now they were perfectly still. Her tears had been falling. Now her eyes were dry. Something inside her had changed. Something had broken, not in the way the Kethany expected. Something had been set free. Dr. Hannah looked at the aliens around and felt no fear anymore. She felt only cold, clear purpose. She knew their weaknesses. She knew how to hurt them. She knew how to kill them. Lieutenant Tay's mind was already working. The uprising would start in 3 days. The anniversary of Sora's death, they would take this ship. They would take every ship. They would burn the Kethany Empire to ashes. Sergeant Day looked at his hands. Hands that had been trained to protect. Hands that would now destroy. He was ready. Minho knew exactly which systems to target. He knew which failures would cause the most chaos. He had been waiting for permission. Now he had it. Gina had the command codes. She had the passwords. She had everything they needed to turn this ship against its masters. Corvax looked at the silent humans and felt something strange. It was not fear. He was too proud to feel fear. But something in those cold, dry eyes made him want to step back. "Take them to their cells," he ordered. "They have learned their lesson." The guards dragged the humans away. Nobody fought. Nobody resisted. But nobody looked down either. They stared at the Kethany with eyes that promised something terrible in her cell that night. Yuna did not whisper stories of Earth. She whispered plans. Every crew member listened. Every crew member understood. Every crew member agreed. They had come to the stars with peace in their hearts. They had offered friendship and hope. The Kethany had answered with cruelty and death. Now the humans would give their own answer. Yuna lay on the cold. Florin thought about Sora, about her smile at the end, about her bravery, about her sacrifice. "You will make them pay," Yuna whispered into the darkness. Every single one of them. In the cells around her, 45 voices whispered back. For Sora. The galaxy would later call it the Night of Fury. Historians would write books about it. Species across 1,000 worlds would tell stories about it. But for the crew of the Starling, It was simply the night they stopped being victims. 3 days after Sora's death, at exactly 0300 ship time, the uprising began. Minho was the first to move. The Cathani had made him work on the power systems, thinking he was too weak to be a threat. They did not know that he had been planning this for months. His hands moved fast in the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. He cut 3 wires. He connected to others. He pressed a button that should never have been pressed. The lights on the entire ship went dark. Emergency power kicked in after 5 seconds. But those 5 seconds were enough. The electronic locks on the prison cells failed. The force fields dropped. And 46 humans walked free into the red emergency lights. Captain Yuna gathered her crew in the corridor. Their faces were hard and cold. Their hands were empty, but their eyes were full of purpose. The armory is 2 levels up, Lieutenant Tay said. I counted 12 guards between here and there. Then we go through them, Yuna replied. No mercy. No hesitation. For Sora, the crew repeated. The Cathani did not understand what was happening. They had seen humans before, soft, weak, emotional. The creatures they had watched cry at sad stories. The creatures who helped strangers and hugged animals. The creatures who made art instead of weapons. They did not see those creatures tonight. Sergeant Day moved like a shadow. He had trained for 20 years to fight, and now he used every skill he had. The first guard died before he could raise his weapon. Day took the alien's knife and kept moving. 2 more guards fell. Then 3 more. The other crew members followed. They were scientists and doctors and engineers. They were not soldiers. But tonight, they fought like their ancestors had fought for thousands of years. With rage, with fury, with the unstoppable violence of a species that had conquered its own world through blood and fire. Dr. Hannah knew exactly where to strike. She had studied Cathani biology for 6 months. She knew that their eyes were sensitive to bright light. She knew that a blow to the base of their skull would kill them instantly. She knew that their armor was weak under the left arm. Every weakness she had found, she used. Every secret she had learned, she turned into a weapon. The armory doors opened after Gina spoke the command code she had stolen. Inside were weapons that Cathani had never thought humans would touch. Energy rifles, plasma pistols, grenades that could melt metal. The crew armed themselves in silence. No cheering, no celebration. Just cold, efficient preparation for what came next. The bridge is 4 levels up, Tay said. Korvax will be there. He always commands from the center. Yuna checked her weapon. Then we take the bridge. We take Korvax. We take this ship. What happened next would be studied by military experts across the galaxy for centuries. 46 humans against a crew of over 500 Cathani soldiers. By every logical measure, it should have been impossible. But the Cathani made a mistake that no species should ever make. They had measured human strength. They had measured human speed. They had measured human numbers. They had never measured human fury. The humans did not fight like the species the Cathani had conquered before. Those species had fought to survive. They had retreated when wounded. They had surrendered when outnumbered. The humans did not retreat. They did not surrender. They kept coming even when they were bleeding. They kept fighting even when they were broken. A species that had evolved as hunters, that had chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. That had survived ice ages and wars and disasters through pure, stubborn refusal to die. Day took a plasma burn to his shoulder. He did not stop. He killed 3 more guards with his wounded arm, hanging useless at his side. Hannah watched her friend Juno fall to enemy fire. She screamed not in fear, but in rage. She picked up Juno's weapon and fought harder. Burning through enemies until her gun overheated, Minho found the engine room and did what engineers do. He broke things. Important things. Things that made the ship shake and alarms sound across every deck. The Cathani soldiers began to panic. Their communications were down. Their power was failing, and the humans kept coming. Always coming. Like a tide that could not be stopped. Captain Yuna led the final assault on the bridge. There were 20 guards between her and Korvax. She went through them all. Her hands were red with blood. Her face was cut and bruised, but her eyes never changed. Cold and calm and absolutely merciless. Admiral Korvac saw her coming. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear. Real fear. The kind that made his 4 eyes go wide and his hearts beat too fast. "Stay back," he ordered. His voice cracked. "I am Admiral Korvac of the Kethany Empire." "You cannot do this," Una smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of something ancient and terrible. "You killed one of mine," she said. "You made us watch." "You thought it would break us?" She stepped closer. Korvac raised his weapon, but his hands were shaking too much to aim. "You want to know what breaks a human?" Una asked. "Nothing. We bend, we suffer. We cry and we scream and we feel pain that your species cannot imagine. But we do not break." It was close enough to touch him now. Close enough to see the fear in all 4 of his eyes. "Should have just killed us all," she whispered. "That was your only chance. Now it is too late." The bridge was silent. Every Kethany soldier was dead or captured. The humans stood among the bodies, bloody and wounded, but victorious. Lieutenant Tay worked the communications console. He opened a channel to the Galactic Council. He opened a channel to Earth. He opened a channel to every ship and every station in the sector. Captain Una stepped in front of the camera. Behind her, the conquered bridge. Beside her, her surviving crew. Her voice was broadcast across the galaxy. "This is Captain Unibeak of Earth. We came to the stars in peace. You answered with cruelty. You took one of ours. We have taken your flagship." She paused. "Let the words sink in. To the Galactic Council who watched and did nothing, we are coming. To the Kethany Empire, we are coming. To anyone who thinks humans are soft, who thinks we are weak, who thinks we can be broken, we are coming." Her eyes were fire and ice and something older than civilization. "Send more ships. We will take those too." The transmission ended. The galaxy had received its message, and nothing would ever be the same. The message from Captain Una reached Earth at 07:04 to Universal Time. By 08:00, every government on the planet had seen it. By 09:00, every human alive knew what had happened to the crew of the Starling. By noon, the world had made a decision. War Admiral Hanpark sat in his office at the United Earth Defense Command. He was 63 years old, a veteran of 3 military conflicts, and a man who had spent his life preparing for threats that never came. His daughter Sora had joined the Starling mission against his wishes. She had wanted to see the stars. She had wanted to meet new species. She had wanted to believe in peace. He watched the recording of her death 17 times. He did not cry. He did not scream. He sat in perfect silence as his heart turned to stone. When the recording ended for the 17th time, he stood up and walked to the command center. His officers looked at him with fear and anger and grief. They had all seen the recording. They all knew what the Kethany had done. "Sir," said Commander Wushin, "what are your orders?" Admiral Park looked at the main screen. It showed the stars. The beautiful, terrible stars where his daughter had died. "Wake them all up," he said. The order went out across Earth. Every veteran of every conflict received a message. Every soldier who had retired received a call. Every warrior who had put down their weapons was asked to pick them up again. They said yes. All of them. Factories that had spent decades making cars and phones and toys received new instructions. Within a week, they were making weapons. Within a month, they were making ships. The assembly lines ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Workers slept in shifts and ate at their stations. Scientists who had studied medicine and agriculture and climate change gathered in secret facilities. They had spent their lives helping humanity. Now they would help humanity destroy its enemies. They built weapons the Kethany had never imagined. They designed ships that broke the rules of warfare. They created systems that turned human anger into pure, focused destruction. Lieutenant Borayun was 31 years old. She had studied military tactics since she was a teenager. She had always believed that humanity was too peaceful to ever fight again. Now, she stood before the War Council, presented a strategy that would become famous across the galaxy. She called it the Swarm. The Kethany fight in formation, she explained. They attack in lines. They defend in patterns. They have done this for 2,000 years because it works against every species they have faced. She pressed a button. The screen showed a simulation of battle. We will not fight in lines. We will attack from every direction at once. We will be everywhere and nowhere. We will give them no formation to target and no pattern to predict. We will be chaos itself. The admirals nodded. The strategy was approved. In 1 year, Earth built 200 warships. They were not beautiful. The Kethany ships had elegant curves and ceremonial designs. Human ships were boxes covered in weapons. They were ugly and brutal and absolutely deadly. The Galactic Council watched with growing concern. They had never seen a species mobilize so fast. They had never seen such industrial power focused on a single purpose. They began to send messages to the Kethany Empire, warning them to prepare for what was coming. The Kethany laughed. They had conquered 12 species across 2,000 years. What could one small planet do against their armada of 10,000 ships? They learned the answer 14 months after Sora's death. The first battle took place in the Korvax system, named after the dead admiral. Commander Wu Xin led the attack with 50 human warships against 300. Kethany defenders. The Kethany formed their perfect lines. They activated their proven strategies. They waited for the humans to make the obvious attacks that every species made. The humans did not make obvious attacks. Human ships came from above and below, from left and right, from angles the Kethany had never considered. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually perfectly coordinated. They struck at weak points and retreated before the Kethany could respond. They used weapons the Empire had never seen. Weapons designed in secret labs by scientists who had turned their intelligence to war. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 270 Kethany ships were destroyed. The humans lost 12. News of the defeat reached the Kethany homeworld. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire felt fear. But the humans were not finished. Every species the Kethany had enslaved received a message. It came in every language, broadcast on every frequency. It was simple. We are humanity. We are coming to free you. When we arrive, fight with us or stay out of the way. The slave species had lived under Kethany rule for centuries. They had forgotten how to hope. They had forgotten how to resist. But when they saw the recordings of human ships tearing through Kethany armadas, when they heard stories of the Night of Fury, when they learned that a species had risen from nothing to challenge their masters, something changed. They began to rebel. On 100 worlds, slave species rose up against their Kethany overseers. They had no weapons. They had no training. But they had numbers, and they had rage, and they had finally seen proof that the Etni, Kethany, could be defeated. Admiral Park led the main fleet toward the Kethany homeworld. Along the way, they freed 12 planets. Each planet's species joined the fight. Each victory brought more allies. The Kethany tried everything. They sent their best admirals. They used their most powerful weapons. They deployed their ancient battle formations that had never failed. Nothing worked. The humans adapted to every strategy. They learned from every battle. They improved their ships and their weapons and their tactics every day. They fought with a fury that terrified everyone who witnessed it. Captain Yuna and the surviving crew of the Starling had become heroes. They traveled with the fleet, their captured ship now renamed the Sora. Yuna advised Admiral Park on Kethany weaknesses. Tay led special assault teams onto enemy vessels. Hannah developed biological agents that targeted Kethany physiology without harming other species. 14 months after the war began, the human fleet reached the Kethany homeworld. The empire that had ruled the sector for 2,000 years surrendered in 3 days. Admiral Park stood on the surface of the conquered planet and looked up at the alien sky. His officers celebrated around him. His soldiers cheered and embraced. But he felt no joy. His daughter was still dead. No victory could change that. He turned to Captain Yuna, who stood beside him in silence. "Is it enough?" he asked. "Does this bring her back?" Yuna shook her head. "No, nothing brings them back, but they will not hurt anyone else. And every species they enslaved is now free." Park nodded slowly. "Then we build something new. Something better. Something worth the price we paid." He looked at the alien sky one more time. "For Sora," he whispered. "Why?" Una put her hand on his shoulder. "For all of them," she said. "For everyone who was lost. We make sure it was not for nothing." The war was over, but humanity's work was just beginning. The Galactic Council Chamber had stood for 10,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had witnessed treaties signed and broken. It had hosted the most powerful beings in the known universe. Today, it was silent with fear. Species that had warred for centuries sat side by side, united by terror. Reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. The Kethany Empire had fallen. 12 enslaved species had been freed. And the humans were still out there, their fleet growing stronger every day. High Counselor Thren stood at the central podium, trying to maintain his authority, but his hands trembled. His voice wavered. He had watched the humans through hidden cameras for 300 years. He had called them weak. He had called them soft. He had been wrong. The doors of the chamber opened. Ambassador Yuncha walked in. She was small by galactic standards, barely reaching the shoulder of the shortest council member. She had silver hair and gentle eyes and a voice, so quiet that the chamber's systems had to amplify it. Behind her walked a delegation of freed species. Creatures who had been slaves for centuries now stood tall and proud, and behind them, in full military uniform, came Captain Unibeak. The council members shifted in their seats. They had seen the recordings of Yuna. They knew what she had done to Korvax. They knew what she was capable of. Jan walked to the center of the chamber and looked round at the assembled leaders of the galaxy. She did not seem impressed. "You watched," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "For 6 months, you watched our people suffer in Kethany cells. You observed their torture. You recorded their pain. You took notes and analyzed data and called them specimens." She paused. The silence was absolute. "We came to you in peace. The Starling carried no weapons. Its crew wanted only to explore and learn and make friends among the stars. They trusted that the galaxy was civilized. They believed that powerful species would protect the weak." Her gentle eyes grew hard. "That was our mistake. It cost us Ensign Sora Park. It cost us the innocence we brought to the stars. It cost us the future we dreamed of." High Counselor Thren spoke carefully. "Ambassador Yun, we understand your anger. The Kethani acted without council approval. We did not order the capture of your vessel. We are not your enemies." Yun smiled. It was not a warm smile. You watched. For 6 months, you watched and did nothing. What do you call a species that sees suffering and chooses not to help? What do you call a council that has the power to save lives and does not use it? Thren had no answer. "But we did not come here for revenge," Yun continued. "We did not come here to conquer or punish or destroy. We are not the Kethany." She placed a small crystal on the podium. It glowed with soft blue light. "This is a treaty. Fair borders for all species. Free trade across the galaxy. Mutual protection against aggression. We are offering partnership, not subjugation." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The council members whispered to each other in confusion. They had expected threats. They had expected demands. They had not expected an offer of peace from a species that had just destroyed an empire. Thren studied the crystal. For a long moment, "And if we refuse?" Captain Yuna stepped forward. The council members drew back in their seats. Even across the width of the chamber, her presence was overwhelming. "You studied us for 300 years, Yuna said. Her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. "You saw us cry at sad stories. You saw us help strangers. You saw us love our families and our friends and even our animals. You thought these things made us weak. She walked closer to the podium, closer to the trembling council leaders. They do not make us weak. They are the only things keeping us from being monsters.
Oh.
She stood before them now, close enough to see the fear in their many different eyes.
Oh.
Humans evolved as hunters. Our ancestors chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Our history is written in blood and war and vengeance. We are capable of violence that would horrify every species in this chamber. Her voice grew even softer. The council members leaned forward to hear, but we chose a different path. We built art and music and stories. We developed love and compassion and mercy. We created laughter and kindness and hope. These are not weaknesses. They are cages. Cages we built around something ancient and terrible inside ourselves. She looked directly at Thren. The Cathani opened that cage. They showed us what happens when humans have nothing left to lose. They reminded us what we really are. The High Counselor swallowed hard. So here is my advice, Una continued. Sign the treaty. Join the partnership. Become our friends. Help us build something better than what came before. She leaned closer. Because if you give us another reason to open that cage, we will not be able to close it again, and none of you will survive what comes out. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the council members voted. The treaty was accepted in less than an hour. The years that followed were called the New Dawn. Humanity became the galaxy's most reliable allies and its most terrifying enemies. They built schools on freed worlds. They established trade routes that brought prosperity to 100 species. They maintained the largest peacekeeping fleet in known space. Admiral Hayon Park lived to see a memorial built for his daughter on the Cathani homeworld, now called New Hope. It was a simple statue of a young woman looking at the stars, her face full of wonder. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, beings from a dozen species came to pay their respects. Captain Unibeak became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She spent her days negotiating peace and building alliances, but she never forgot what she was capable of, and neither did anyone else. Lieutenant Tehan wrote a book called The Patience of Predators. It became required reading for every species in the galaxy. It explained what humans were and why they should never be pushed too far. Dr. Hannah Lim returned to science. She discovered cures for diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries. She won awards and honors from a dozen worlds. But she kept a small photograph of Sora on her desk, and sometimes she would look at it and remember the Night of Fury. The freed species built statues of humans on their homeworlds. They told stories of the small, soft creatures who had defeated an empire. They taught their children that hope could come from the strangest places, and across the galaxy, a saying spread. It was spoken in trading posts and military academies. It was written in diplomatic guides and children's books. It was repeated by every species that had learned the truth about humanity. Make friends with the humans. Make them laugh. Make them love you. Trade with them. Learn from them. Welcome them as partners and allies. But whatever you do, never make them furious, because humans were never meant to be furious. And the galaxy learned this lesson the hard way. The stars shone on the galaxy turned. And somewhere, on a small blue planet called Earth, children looked up at the night sky and dreamed of the wonders waiting for them. They would find those wonders. They would meet new species and explore new worlds. They would build friendships that spanned the cosmos. But they would never forget what they were. Gentle creatures who had caged something terrible inside themselves. Peaceful beings who could become the galaxy's nightmare. Humans, the most dangerous species in the universe, and the most wonderful. The end.